Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darren Wood, the Partnerships Manager at the GCMA, and welcome to this webinar with one of our partners, Obbi Golf, who are our health and safety experts partnering with the GCMA. We've got Senior Account Manager Ryan Bell with us today, and we have Steuart Fotheringham from Alps Consultancy, who are going to be talking us through some interesting health and safety and food safety bits of information this afternoon. So Ryan, I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Darren. Yes, as Darren says, I'm Ryan Bell, Senior Account Manager at Obbi Golf, and we provide an award-winning software solution to manage your health, safety, compliance, and also task management across your golf club to bring health and safety, a topic that people like to tend to avoid, into the digital age. I'm delighted to have Steuart Fotheringham with us today. Steuart is one of the leading independent health and safety consultants that we work with. Steuart covers the UK and has an extensive background in health and safety at being in and around clubs and obviously drawing up specific assessments for those clubs. So today on the call, Steuart is going to do a short presentation on HACCP and the risks that go along with this, whether you're using your own caterer or maybe you have a franchise caterer. And once Steuart's completed his presentation, I have created what I believe is a very interesting document on speaking to your committee, if you're a general manager who has a committee or a board, or maybe a group of decision makers within the club, and how to best have them understand the importance of health, safety and compliance within the golf sector. And that slideshow should have quite a few good examples of things that can go wrong and how we want to avoid them going wrong. So at this point, I think I'll pass across to Steuart and he can take you through his presentation.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me on, both of you. As I've said, my name is Steuart Fotheringham. I'm a health and safety, food safety, fire safety consultant based in the UK and spend quite a lot of time in golf courses, maybe less time playing than I would like. So what I wanted to do today was just kind of based a little bit on my experience of dealing with golf clubs. And one of the biggest blind spots that I find that a lot of clubs generally have is around the food safety side of things. As Ryan said, whether it's in-house catering solution or whether it's franchised out, at the end of the day, the club has the responsibility for making sure that what goes on in that kitchen is up to standard. So what I thought I'd do is just cover off some of the basics of HACCP. HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points, HACCP. If you're in Scotland, you'll know your HACCP system is CookSafe. In England, it generally goes by Safer Food, Better Business. And what HACCP effectively is a food safety management system that identifies and controls hazards which are significant for food safety from purchase, buying food in from your suppliers, your service when it comes out the kitchen. So what the law says, all food business operators must implement a food safety management system based on HACCP principles. Easy enough. Yeah, as I say, in Scotland, it's CookSafe. In England, it's Safer Food, Better Business. Having been out at a number of golf clubs recently, the HACCP document itself is not something that just sits on a shelf gathering dust. The club I was at last week, they'd had theirs sitting on a shelf gathering dust from 2005, even though the system was updated by the Scottish Government in September 2022. So out of date, unused, not looked at. It's not compliant with the law. And again, if an environmental health officer comes out, they're going to want to look at that document. And if you're picking it up, blowing the dust off it, and all the rest of it, it's not a good start to that visit as far as an EHO is concerned. So make sure, takeaway number one, make sure that you're reviewing that document, that it's up to date, and that actually covers all the things that are happening within your club. So there are a number of HACCP principles that we need to be concerned about. CookSafe and Safer Food, Better Business actually do quite a lot of this kind of stuff for you. So you don't have to build this from scratch within your club unless you're doing quite high-end food. You're making your own pate or you're selling oysters or something like that. But there are quite a lot of areas that you do need to cover off and you do need to think about. So identify hazards and the control measures. So we'll cover that in a bit more detail. What are critical control points, critical limits, how you monitor it, how you make sure your franchisee is monitoring it properly, any corrective actions that you need to take, verification, validation, and how you need to record it. Okay. Food safety law in the UK is the only law where there's what's called a due diligence defence. So if somebody comes to you and they claim that they've got a dodgy stomach, sickness and diarrhea from something they've eaten in your club, if you can prove that you follow all the principles of HACCP, if you can prove that, then any prosecution against the club would automatically fail, because you can say, well, look, I'm doing my due diligence. I've done it. I can prove that I've done it. And therefore, if there was to be any enforcement action taken against you, you should be able to defend that. So that's a due diligence defence. So a hazard is the potential to cause harm to the consumer. And that's split into 4 areas in food safety. So you've got the microbiological bacteria, viruses, molds, and parasites. Okay, so that's a lovely thing food safety talking about it. So microbiological, that could be Salmonella, it could be E. coli 157, it could be Clostridium perfringens, Campylobacter, and so on and so forth. Viruses, you get foodborne pathogens, so that would be things like norovirus, for example, is quite easily transmissible by food. And then obviously molds and parasites particularly in sea caught fish. Physical, such as glass, screws and hair. Hands up if you've never had a meal that's had a hair in it that's not yours.
Yeah. I'd like to say I could put my hand up, but I can't.
I am with Darren.
I think everyone's had a hair in their meal at least once. Yeah, at least once.
Yeah.
When I stayed in Kilmarnock, I got a takeaway. I've had 2 takeaways, one from a Chinese and one from an Indian. And in the Indian, there was a screw, an actual screw in my chicken tikka masala. It was actually okay because you could tell it was a screw from a wok.
Okay.
We just stuck it to one side and carried on eating. But the Chinese, they actually had glass in theirs, which did prompt a phone call because it's pretty dangerous, you know. Then we've got chemicals, we've got pesticides, we've got cleaning chemicals. In fact, I was in the kitchen the other day where they're still using bleach to clean the kitchen. Bleach isn't food safe. You don't want to be eating your prawn cocktail with added bleach. And then we've got allergens, peanuts, milk, eggs, dairy-free, gluten-free, all that kind of stuff. In a kitchen or from a supplier to service, there's quite a lot that can go wrong. And what the HACCP system does is it says if we follow all of these steps, it is impossible for your customer to get food poisoning, to get a bad reaction to an allergen, to get chemical poisoning, or to break a tooth on a physical item that's been found in the food. Okay, so that's the purpose of the HACCP system, is just to avoid these hazards. And if you do it right, that becomes an impossibility. Happy with that so far, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Can I just ask a question on defensibility? Because I get asked it by golf clubs quite frequently. if you have a contract caterer in place at your golf club and something food related incident wise, whether it be food poisoning or an issue like you've mentioned, a few golf clubs have said to me, "Oh, well, look, the caterer looks after that claim may come against them, but it won't affect us." Could you maybe clarify on exactly if the caterer is working on the golf club premises? I would believe that may not be true.
That's a really good point, Ryan. Thanks for raising that. The club has what's called a vicarious liability. They are partly responsible for the mistakes of their contractors and subcontractors. So if they are taking on a caterer and, for example, they've not checked that the chefs involved have any kind of food safety training, or if they do, what level it is, they're not fulfilling their due diligence in terms of making sure that they're taking on a subcontractor that's capable of doing the work. What insurance levels are in place? Do the caterers have sufficient insurance? So if you've got 150 people at the captain's dinner and 50 of them have a dodgy prawn, then does the caterer have enough insurance cover to pay any claims that are made against them? You need to understand that the claim might be made against the club in the first place, and then the club has to subrogate its insurance against the caterer. It's a mess. It's really what it becomes. And therefore, what the club needs to be able to do is be able to make sure that it's ahead of the game. Yeah, prevention is always better than cure when it comes to that. And doing your due diligence, I mean, to be honest, right across the board, not just in terms of your catering, but in terms of your electrician, in terms of the people that come in and service your greens equipment and so on and so forth. You need to do your due diligence that these people are competent to do the work. Even my own job, only one client ever has asked me for a copy of my qualifications.
Well,
yeah. Now I've got them and I can provide them, but it does always make me smile a little bit, and nobody yet's asked me for my insurance documents. We've identified the hazards, and then what we have is we have various critical control points along the journey from farm to fork, to coin a phrase. And the critical control points is a step that is absolutely essential. It must be applied to prevent or eliminate a food safety hazard or reduce it to an acceptable level. Bacteria are everywhere. Absolutely everywhere, regardless of what you touch, where you go, you're picking up bacteria all of the time. And some of it's safe bacteria, some of it's essential for gut health and so on and so forth, but also some of it's really quite bad for you. As I mentioned, Salmonella, E. coli 0157, and then norovirus, and obviously recently potentially COVID as well.
Yeah.
So a critical control point is an area that you must deal with in the preparation of food that goes through, as I say, from farm to fork. Now, I'll talk a wee bit more about that in just a moment. Critical limit is a value to which a biological, chemical, or physical factor must be controlled to prevent food safety hazards. So that could be the temperature. So if you're thinking about cooking a sausage, for example, the minimum core temperature that sausage has got to get to is 75 degrees. 75 degrees. Why? Because when it hits 75 degrees, it kills all the food bacteria that are in there. So perhaps Campylobacter dies at 75 degrees. That's why it's so important to probe your foodstuffs so that you know what temperature it's hit. So temperature is quite easy, but there's also a lot around humidity, moisture, pH. That's the acidity level of the food, water activity, time, salt concentration, and preservatives. So these are all different areas, mainly used by food manufacturers, whereby they can control the amount of bacteria in any given foodstuff. If that process fails, then you could be buying in, serving food that isn't safe for human consumption. So again, I had a client recently the reason I used the sausage, actually, they'd served a customer with a venison sausage.
Right.
Fine. 48 hours later, the person that ate it is in hospital. Because he's in hospital, they do what's called stool samples. So they test somebody's stool and they make sure, or they test to see what bacteria is in it. And in this case, the hospital lab came back and said, well, it's Campylobacter that happens to be in that. In the stool sample, what have you been eating, etc. Now, this was actually a hotel. What we were able to do is go back and look at saying, right, where did we get the sausages from? Right, they're a bona fide person. They not been bought at the back door. We know they were cooked to the right temperature. We know they served them to 30 other people that day. So, and nobody else reported any ill effects. So, was it us? I think we might be able to prove that it wasn't, or at least try and defend an insurance claim if it came in. And that kind of brings us round to the next part, which is really around monitoring. Unless you're monitoring what you're doing, there's no point in doing it. There's no defensibility there, as Ryan said. There's no due diligence.
Yeah.
You're saying, yeah, honest, I cooked that sausage to 75. Did you?
Yeah.
Prove it. Yeah, where's it written down?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that some kitchens do, and I had a chef admit this to me last week, and it was just so disappointing. The chef turned around, this wasn't a golf club. The chef and a self-employed franchise caterer just said, yeah, I just fill in my temperature records at the end of the week.
Do you think quite a lot of that goes on?
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Absolutely, massively. You can tell by the handwriting,
yeah,
the pen that's being used. When somebody's doing it very repetitively, the handwriting's always very similar. It's always the same person. It's usually the same pen. Some people will try and switch colours to make it look a little bit less obvious.
Yeah.
So,
Steuart, I have had an example with that with a golf club as well, which obviously I won't name, but the head chef, it was actually the head chef who told me, and that he said to me, look, when I maybe go off on annual leave, we have a series of books that we need filled in, and I can always tell when the team behind them maybe haven't done it when they should have, because for all the reasons you said, the pen, the writing, everything that goes with it, and obviously it's all done on paper. So again, obviously we'll move into obviously software and the importance of recording it digitally, so you have traceable evidence of when it did happen. But I have a question for you, Steuart, that I'm interested, is that I have had a number of golf clubs say to me, our kitchen is catered, it is outside franchised, and we are sure it has a copy of the food hygiene certificate, but they don't have a copy of it themselves. How big a problem is that for golf clubs if they don't have physical copies of things like food hygiene certificates?
It's just a massive issue. To be honest, you need to be absolutely 100% sure that the people you are asking to do the job are competent to do it. And if they don't have the relevant food safety training in place, then that's, food safety law, like health and safety laws, it's criminal law. The club can be prosecuted, but club managers can also, as individuals, as well as the caterer, can all be prosecuted. And so if you're taking somebody on, you need to make damn sure that they are competent to do the work that's required of them. And food safety can be a little bit tricky, and as we were both just describing, Ryan, there, people do take shortcuts. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So as a club manager, you need to be on top of your caterer, perhaps a little bit more than you are at the moment, to say at the end of the day, can I see your records? Have they been completed on a daily basis, or even better, use an online system so that you can tell the exact moment that the data was input? You can tell if it was done a week at a time, or if it's been done 3 times a day as it should be.
Absolutely. Another one, Steuart, just to go to the absolute other end of the scale, as I have a lot of people who come into a new role of a general manager, and they have maybe a franchise, giving franchise caterers our time here, but franchise caterer. That caterer may have been in the golf club 25 years, and the GM is new. What's the best way for a general manager who's new to a club to approach a contract caterer who's been there such an incredible length of time and say to them, can I see your records? Is there any easy way to do that? Is there any way where it may, come across a little softer than somebody just trying to make an impact? Even, to be honest, that impact needs to be made.
That's a really, really good point. And in actual fact, the club that I was in last week, it was exactly that situation. It was a new manager, and the caterer had been there for 12 years. And the way that the manager was dealt with it was really by getting me in and to do the due diligence on the caterer, to make sure that the caterer was up to scratch. But their food safety certificate was out of date by about 20 years. The HACCP system was out of date by 17 years. The food records were being completed on a weekly basis. There was just issue after issue after issue. It was clear to me that the chef was a pretty good chef, but there was just nothing there at all to be able to back that up. And if there had been a claim coming in against the club, or even if there is now a claim coming in against the club can't defend it. Yeah, there's no background there. There's none of that monitoring. There's none of that due diligence being carried out at the moment. Yeah, but that will change.
I certainly find from a GCMA member's perspective that some of the meetings that I go to where I see people face to face now, there's a lot more engagement in asking the questions around health and safety now. They realise they've got, the days of just ticking boxes to make sure it's done at the end of the week can't really continue where that's been happening. So I think there's a lot more engagement than I've seen over the last 3 months.
Sure. I think it's something that really is beginning to take hold. I think, if I may say, there's a more professional level of manager perhaps coming into place who are professional club managers rather than kind of retired people that are becoming a club secretary for a period of time. And nothing against them at all, but I think golf clubs now are of a complexity that you require to have a professional in place to be able to manage that. Certainly in all but the smallest of clubs, and part of the reason is the things that we're talking about today. So we've covered what HACCP is. We've covered critical control points, critical limits. We've talked about monitoring. What happens then if the monitoring flags up a problem? You say, "Oh, this isn't right." So what you have is your corrective actions. Okay. Now the easiest one of this is you've got your venison sausage there, yeah, and you've got to cook it to 75. You take it out from under the grill. It looks a little bit, as we say in Scotland, peely-wally. Yeah. You stick your probe in it, and it's 60 degrees. You're thinking, right, okay, that's not up to speed. What do we do? The corrective action is you put it back under the grill, yeah, and you keep cooking it until it hits the 75. Yeah. So it can be something really, really, really simple like that, or it could be that somebody hasn't closed the freezer door properly and it's been left open all night, and you come in the Monday morning and some of the food's defrosted. Yeah, what's your corrective action there? You're just getting a bin bags. At that point, you're emptying.
I must admit, I'm glad to hear
that. Yeah. Well, it depends. If it's the raw meat fridge, people might be tempted.
Well, I'll cook it straight away and get it used that day, maybe. But I like the bin bag idea.
Yeah, just get it in the bin. If it was a failure of a fridge or freezer, your other corrective action would obviously to be getting an engineer out to repair or replace the item of equipment that's failed.
It does seem to me that a lot of what you're talking about is just common sense. Some of it. And I think it's just pushing people to engage with it properly.
Yeah, I mean, common sense. Darren, you've unwittingly hit upon my least favourite phrase.
All right, okay.
Because common sense is a myth. Common sense doesn't exist. It's rocking horse poo.
Right.
Just during the COVID pandemic, people wore masks and they didn't wear masks. There's no commonality in the level of sense. And so if your defence in a criminal court is, Your Honour, it was only common sense, and you're going to have a bit of a tough time. So common sense is a really dangerous
concept.
Because you've got to cater for, pun intended, you've got to cater for the idiot, the weakest link in the chain, or in a food safety sense, you've got to cater to the person with a really sensitive nut allergy or whatever, so we can't just be saying, it's common sense, everybody fits into the same box. We don't.
What we're doing through things like this is creating these fail safes to remove the common sense. There is no, there's no grey area. It's got to be a certain way. So you're not left to somebody's common sense to make the decision.
Absolutely right. Perfect. Bang on. Yep. We're taking the ability for people to freestyle when it comes to safety. We're taking that away and we're replacing it with something that's been scientifically proven to work, and putting it in such a format that it's really easy to follow. With HACCP, with Safer Food, Better Business and CookSafe, in actual fact, most of the validation and the verification has been done for you. So we know if we cook it to 75, we know in Scotland if we reheat it to 82, we know if we hold it at 64, we know if we store it at minus 18, whatever it is. Yep. Yeah. We know that works. That's scientifically proven. It's written into all the food safety documents. We don't have to worry about validation and verification unless you're making your own pate, unless you're smoking or curing fish or meat, or unless you're doing something high hazard sous vide, which again is going to be a very, very, very small percentage of clubs that are doing that. So validation, verification broadly done for you. And then as we were talking about, just in relation to monitoring, your record keeping is so important. Okay, because the only thing that you can do is be able to, in terms of your due diligence defense, is be able to say, look, here are my records, here's my training records, here's my HACCP system, just what we do. This is my allergen charts. Again, the club I was in last week didn't have any allergen charts in place. So, you could have an inexperienced runner or server that's out there taking orders and isn't even thinking to ask about allergens, wouldn't even know what an allergen was or what allergens are in what dish. Fine.
Yeah, I mean, it has become quite common. Steuart, and what I find is that in recent times, and this has happened at golf clubs that I've spoken to in the last month, is that the health and safety executive has been walking into golf clubs in various areas around the UK and Ireland, which hasn't been overly common because they tend to stick to maybe slightly more regulated industries. And a couple of general managers have showed me exactly what they've looked for. Things like fire warden training, food safety records, HACCP, food hygiene certificates. And what the health and safety executive was saying is, look, before we were maybe focused on other industries, now we need to really look at the golf club sector. And if you don't have those records, Steuart, better than anybody, we're talking 30 days. And you can't just make up records in 30 days.
No. Back in the day, it used to be the way I got business, actually, was going through because these are all public records. If you get issued with an enforcement notice by environmental health or health and safety executive, they're a matter of public records. You can Google them and find them. One quite good website to go into is scoresonthedoors.org. And scoresonthedoors.org has the food safety rating for every single food business operator in the UK. Right. So back in the day, I would go through that and find out all the people that had failed and then give them a wee phone and say, look, hi, my name's Steuart, do you need a hand? It's always quite an interesting exercise to do with your own local takeaway. And it's also quite good to do with with your own business. One of the other things I would just say, just while it crosses my mind in terms of validation and verification, and I'll just click back a slide really, really quickly, is, TripAdvisor, OpenTable, Google reviews, where people are talking about your F&B operation, gives you a huge amount of feedback in terms of the quality of the product that you're putting out. So if you have, a situation, somebody's writing a TripAdvisor review and they said, yeah, we had the scampi and it was awful. The chips weren't cooked properly, or the scampi was cold in the middle. Mm. At that point you've got a food safety issue even before there's a claim come in, or before environmental health makes a visit. And when you're looking at your balanced scorecard and your KPIs across the club, then certainly getting and reading and reviewing customer feedback's really a really important part of that process. So that kind of really brings me to the end of the principles of HACCP. I've got 2 food safety diplomas, and it's been weeks and weeks of studying, and I've tried to distill it to you in 25 minutes or so. So it's always going to be a bit of a tough ask, but obviously Darren and Ryan have my contact details. If anybody needs any help with their food safety, then by all means do get in touch, and I'll try and answer any questions. But Ryan, I'll pass over on to you now.
Perfect, no problem. Thank you, Steuart. That was absolutely superb, and I'm hoping that it's going to maybe have, if not opened a few eyes, hopefully maybe alerted people to the fact that practices might not be as strong as they should be in the golf clubs. And so what I'd like to talk about, just to give you a bit of an overview to Obbi Golf, if you don't know who we are, as I said, we provide a health and safety software platform which covers compliance and also task management. So in simple terms, if you were to use Obbi Golf today, every staff member would have a login, and in their login would be every risk assessment, every SOP, all the digital, written and shadowing training for their job role. And on top of that, there's document storage. And probably what sets us aside from any other health and safety software is that we also have a full task management suite. So that becomes absolutely vital when Steuart has mentioned about keeping records of maybe things that happen in the kitchen or in the greenkeeper shed. And that task management suite allows your head of departments and the staff under them to do their checks, whether it be an opening and closing checklist in their bar, whether they're doing a pre-use check on a piece of greenkeeping equipment, or whether they're doing the fridge checks in the evening. You can do that seamlessly on the Obbi platform. But certainly from a health and safety standpoint, we offer a pre-populated system, which basically means that you have all the written content for your SOPs and risk assessments that you need. So if you're looking at 17 or 18 files and folders behind your desk and you don't know exactly what's in them, it's okay. We can provide that. And anything that Steuart has beautifully written up for you that is specific to your golf club, we can take that and put it on the system as well. Now, what I wanted to talk about today is committees and how it is it can be easier to explain to committees how important health and safety within golf clubs are. I was in a golf club not so long ago where one of the committee members said to me, well, I work in a commercial environment and I know how important health and safety is, but this is a golf club. To which point I said, well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm fairly sure you're not a registered charity. You're a commercial premises. And as a result, just like any premises that has employees, the number one priority has to be their health and safety. Obviously, the legal duty of care falls on the general manager and also the committee for this to happen. So what we want to do is when I present the software system, general managers, they often take it to committee, and there can often be a bit of a grey area as to how important it really is to look at it. So we've created a document today that I'd like to run through with you that I hope will make a general manager's life easier when they speak to the committee about health and safety. Just to give you an idea, there's some of the official partners that we work with, obviously the GCMA that we're on today, CMAE, the Irish Golf Club Managers, and the Scottish, Howden Insurance and Rubric Law. So if I flick down to my first slide, why clubs and committees need to invest in safety and compliance. So obviously there are various aspects. The legal duty of care, as I mentioned there, is the most important. Reducing claims. Now, insurance is there to make sure that the golf club doesn't go under if something absolutely gigantic happens. It is certainly not a protector against incidents happening. It is just there, obviously, as your sort of backbone and a little bit of security. However, reducing claims premiums can be done if you have a digital software system in place, and we can talk to you about that. Criminal prosecutions, if something very, very serious happens, we've many a case study that say that people can go to jail. Reputational damage, people maybe don't want to work or be in a premises that is dangerous because they could obviously be at risk, and invalidate your insurance. So if you aren't using the proper practices like the ones that Steuart mentioned there, insurance companies are going to be a little wary. If they don't raise your premiums, they may not deal with you at all, and that can happen. Are you 100% confident that you're meeting your legal requirements as a golf club? And that covers your people, your health and safety processes, your facilities management, the governing standards, and obviously third-party contractors, which is one that often goes missing in this sector. Have you got the relevant documentation for things like window cleaners, electricians, cleaners, anything that you may use as a contractor? Because it's vital that if people are working on your premises that aren't employed by you, that you're also protected. And what we have here, this is an interactive document, and anything I show you today can be shared out by Darren across the GCMA board. There's a compliance checklist attached to this, and you can see, am I compliant as a golf club? Safety and compliance failures, and what we have here is an article, which is a CMAE case study, the 400,000 being paid out by a golf club for someone getting hit by a golf ball. If I click into that, it will take me to the full story. So golf clubs, in your own time, you can read this article. It'll give you an idea of how these incidents can occur on the worst case scenario. And we always have to look, and I would think that Steuart would agree with me here, Steuart, that you always have to look at the worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no point in having rose-tinted spectacles on, is there? You need to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Absolutely. And many a golf club say to me, well, we haven't had a claim in my time here, or if a GM's been there maybe 20 years, well, that you know what, that's great. And that's what we want. However, it could happen tomorrow. And all the hard work that the golf club's done to increase its reputation and generate revenue to put back into the membership and the course, that can go in an instant, and insurance claims and premiums can go through the roof. So that article makes a little bit of indication. Sorry, Steuart?
I was just saying, absolutely, yeah, it can really go, particularly, it's good that you've got a section on your portal for subcontractors, because again, it's just a massive blind spot for a lot of club managers. Maybe you've used the same person traditionally to come in and do the work. Maybe the person's a member, and you think, all right, okay, we'll give something back to the membership, and we'll get them in there. They seem like they know what they're doing. Yeah, do they? Have we checked? Have we made sure? So great, use members, fantastic. But let's make sure they're competent to do the work.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I've seen,
I know.
Many an example. Yes, many example. If a member isn't getting roped into being a general manager, he's getting roped into health and safety officer. So
I know, or window cleaner, or oh god, I know.
Window cleaner. But this is the average cost of compliance failures. So the average fine in the UK is over £100,000 if there's a hand or a finger injury. Now, you may believe that may be a loss of a finger. It isn't necessarily a lost finger. It could be severe laceration. And again, we have a compliance and prosecution checker on here that you can go in and you can see the most recent court cases and what people paid out. As I said, it's not a scare tactic. It's just reality. It is what can happen. And again, when things like that go to court, you want to ensure that you have the relevant documentation. They're signed by employees. You know when they were seen. You know when they were trained. And that will certainly protect the golf club and an eventual payout, which, while it may be likely that they will get something, the level of what somebody gets will be determined on how well the club is protected in terms of its documentation and its practices. Moving on, we have a little bit here, obviously, from Mike Farrell. So Mike is the Associate Director at Howden Insurance, who are the partner of the GCMA and the Professional Golfers Association. As Mike says, having an effective risk mitigation process in place can help golf clubs with claims defensibility, which can lower premiums. Obviously, using Obbi Golf are in position to help in this manner, and certainly Mike is definitely worth talking to from an insurance point of view if you want to take a look at what can be done within the golf sector and your insurance premiums. We also have a little bit on golf club law from Rubric Law. You're the GCMA's partner in golf club law, and there's a testimonial here from James, which I'll not play now. You can watch in your own time, which gives a bit of an overview from a law perspective of what you need to do as a golf club, because obviously you have employees, you have HR responsibilities, and those are going to be vital as you maybe grow as a golf club and add new staff, throughout the year. We also now have a testimonial, which is from Brendan McDermott. Brendan is the general manager of Beaver Golf Club in Belfast, and Brendan goes through in this testimonial what life was like before Obbi Golf. What, in his experience as a long-standing general manager, have been the problems in the health and safety sector, why people often view it as a minefield, and how working with Obbi Golf has streamlined that process, made life easier for his staff, and most important, given visibility to the general manager and the head of departments exactly where the staff are in terms of seeing, acknowledging, training documents, task management, and making sure that everything is where it should be. So you can watch that just when you get a chance. Then we have compliance checklist. So this is along the lines that we saw at the start, but in a little more detail. Have you got all employee contracts and policies signed? Have you got safe audit procedures for your staff? Have you got evidence of competency in tools and machinery, including the checks? Have you got best practice training? There's one that have been copied there by comment on by Steuart with your HACCP, your COSH, fire, food hygiene, licenses and certificates. Obviously, there are areas in the golf club that maybe go unmentioned, is that greenkeepers will have certain qualifications over the years to do what they do, and maybe they need those documentations stored as well in our system, because that way they'll know when they have to renew those, and policies get expired all the time. And when the HSE walks in and they do look for that documentation, you don't want it to say 1997 on it, which it did for a club that I spoke to recently. All statutory and industry best practice checks, fire alarm, emergency lighting. You may use an outside company to do this, but the key is, does the outside company have all the relevant information to you when you need it, or is it stored on another platform? In Obbi Golf, it's stored in your platform. So if they do a check, we'll take the documentation, we'll take the checks, and we'll store it for you, so that again, you have visibility of that. You don't want to be ringing third parties and saying, could I have a copy of this? Could I have a copy of that? Because people change, people move on. They may not have everything that you need. You want to have it yourself, and that way you're going to be more protected. Accidents, incidents, and near misses. I haven't come across a golf club in recent memory that doesn't have a big black book for accidents. And again, books go missing, and a lot of the time there are not relevant or best practice questions in these accident books, and we need to be asking the right questions when an incident happens. In Obbi Golf, you can have this automatically tied to your insurance company. As soon as an accident happens, you can have it automatically sent to them, and then they can review it when an accident happens, and you'll know exactly what position you're in. Contractor policies we've discussed. Maintenance checks. What about manufacturer warranties? All procedures are going to need to be in place for an insurance company. External catering, we've discussed that as well. And if every golf club has all of the above in place, I would be very proud of them, and they won't need to work with myself or Steuart. But in my experience, and I'm sure in Steuart's experience, we do see a lot of gaps in golf clubs. A lot of things fall through the cracks, and we're here to try and make sure that you're on top of it. The word that is always used when I speak to golf clubs is minefield. A lot of clubs do not know where to start. And it's not as complicated as it may seem if you have the basics in place. And that's what I will say, is that by working with ourselves, working with Steuart, we can put the basics in place from scratch, which will give you access to what you need. It doesn't need to be as complicated as people think. So hopefully, any questions to ask, Steuart? Do you see anything in that presentation that maybe sparks your interest?
No, I think the key to safety is keeping it simple. And by having all of the stuff there, just at the touch of a button, is really, really useful. Quite often we're out at golf clubs, and in fact, again, the one I was at 3 or 4 weeks ago, they thought they'd had all their gas appliances done, but they had a gas fire in one of the lounges, and that hadn't been inspected. You know, they got their catering done, they got their boiler done, but they missed the fireplace. So, you know, I think having that type of thing there, where we can try and make it as easy as possible for people to follow, because golf club managers are busy people, you know, and maybe just don't have the time to be able to run through and chase up every single certificate that they should have. But just by having it online and just being able to look it up, it would make a big difference, I think.
I would totally agree, and I know Darren, in his previous experience, would agree that it's probably the only job, certainly, that I can think of where you don't do just your specific job. You might be helping someone with their locker key. You might be generating revenue for the golf club. You may be fixing the membership. You're looking at health and safety. So when you've got so many moving targets, we want to try and make it as easy as possible. So what I'll leave you with is the thought that if you do deal with myself and then you deal with Steuart as well, when it comes to Obbi Golf, we have a visibility dashboard for managers. They can, at the click of a button, see any gaps across any department in 60 seconds. And that's all general managers ever ask for me. Our existing customers say, look, now I know where the gaps are. Before, I didn't know where they were. So work with professionals, work with assessors, work with software, and streamline your H&S processes going forward. So at this point, I'd like to thank Steuart for attending. I'd love to thank Darren for inviting us on. We're delighted to be able to do this. And I'll pass back over to yourself, Darren.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Ryan and Steuart, thank you ever so much for jumping on with us today. Really good food for thought on there. And I think in being a general manager, they aren't experts in every single area of golf club management. And I think engaging with companies that we work with and that we bring on board as partners can help them with their knowledge gaps and signpost them to the experts in their field that can help them manage their golf facility in a very safe way. So I think engaging with the likes of you guys is something that everybody should consider. So thanks very much, guys, again. If you are interested in Obbi Golf and the services that they can provide, they are on our website. So if you go onto the GCMA website and the partner page, Obbi Golf have a section on there, so look them up. Steuart, thanks very much again. Great to meet you today. Some really good food for thought from both of you guys, and hopefully we'll see you on a GCMA webinar again very soon.